Hey, look at us. Who would have thought we'd be here on Valentine's Day again? Ash has been post-officed into many hopeful relationships by Pokemon fans everywhere, and with this being Valentine's Day, and everyone feeling that soaring array of love through the air for other people, we look at another girl Ash should have been coerced and written in to confess his love for, like Ash is going on a pathway through a dating simulator, as most Pokemon shippers think this is what the anime is actually about. Well, we've been here together on my channel for many years with numerous Valentine's Days passing, and made it through the countless reasons Ash should have dated his fellow companions, and here we are together to finally bring into light the reasons why Generation 4 held one of Ash's potential love interests with Pearlshipping, and why he should have dated Dawn. And if these reasons aren't enough to convince you, I've got 4 other videos about Ash with 4 different people, so at least one of these 50 reasons has to hit. And as a special thank you for being here through this loving time throughout the years with many of my classic videos being released during this month, every Friday in February will be a special date night here on the channel with more heartfelt content, like this, so stay tuned for that, and thanks for being here. Number 10. Similar Pokemon characteristics. Ash and Dawn have a lot of similarities in the Pokemon they train. When Dawn first got Piplup, Piplup was also unruly and disobedient, eventually making Dawn have to work a bit to get Piplup to warm up to her. Remind you of anyone? Pikachu? Ash got electrocuted so many times, maybe take all of that as a static reminder and share it with another person who has also had to deal with Pokemon who shock you both physically and emotionally. That's some commonality for the two of them. Even going down the line, Ash had Charizard and Primeape who also wouldn't obey him, and Dawn had Weasel and Mamoswine. So just these 2 daycare workers consoling their rough-to-train Pokemon and eventually getting them all to warm up to them means they go great together and working hand-in-hand taming a bunch of angsty teens. And if only dealing with Pokemon who have problems is not enough, they each own their own regular loving Quilava, who evolved from a Cyndaquil, where both knew the exact same moves as one another, and both had learned Eruption right after evolving. That's a sign of a fiery passion erupting between the two. If that's not a coincidence you could over-translate and use as some innate message of Ash and Dawn being paired together, then I don't know what is. Number 9. Contests. Ash has actually been to every single one of Dawn's contests, and his first contest entry was him joining one that Dawn was also in. That's basically boyfriend support right there. He wasn't able to make it to every single one of May's contests because someday he would be out training. And maybe that seems like a healthy, hey, I trust you to win, I'm gonna go out back and teach Pikachu Volt Tackle again. But he did also manage to make it to every single contest Dawn was in, which is its own supportive task. One might seem a little bit better than the other, but some could be a little possessive too, I'm not sure. I mean, an entire generation goes by and May can't convince him to ever join in a contest, as well as missing some of May's contests that she's in, yet he never misses one for Dawn and enters with her? That's a bit of a competitive hint between 2 ships right there. Number 8. She cries a lot. Okay, maybe, just maybe this doesn't sound like the best of reasons, but hear me out. She doesn't hide her feelings. If she's sad, she happens to cry, and that's okay. That's a better way to express yourself than holding in a grudge and getting into a fight at any chance you get. Over a bike. That wasn't even entirely your fault if you actually look at the context of it. I mean, there's even a whole section where Dawn is depressed, failing to pass the performance stage 2 times in a row, and has to excuse herself, which Ash and Brock managed to notice. Ash is picking up on some feelings here. That's a good start. I mean, it didn't actually help her at the time to console her, but afterwards Dawn manages to defeat May in the Wallace Cup and win, regaining her confidence and becoming more determined and positive. And she beat May again, both in Ash's contest attendance overall, and with a victory in a contest they are both participating in, bringing her stock up a little here in the shipping ranks. Number 7. Constant high fives. They high five a lot. Maybe it seems like just high fives, but overall throughout each series of Pokemon, that's probably the most physical contact Ash has ever had. I mean, let's analyze his final high five here in slow motion. A quick stern call out with "wait a minute" by Dawn, as if you've conjoined hands so often that he cannot refuse whatsoever. Confident raising of the hand from Dawn knowing it's coming to you and no one is going to leave you hanging. Immediate happy run towards with starting sprint from Ash to wind up the resonating slap from one hand to another. Good use of wrist from both participants where they hold into pose as it pans down to Piplup and Pikachu doing the exact same thing, and then those two hugging. You don't know what Ash and Dawn were doing after this. That's a pan down with her legs just there. Maybe she gripped his hand and pulled him in for a kiss, but it just wasn't viewer friendly at the time this episode was released. Maybe they just stayed in this position with their hands together and stared at each other. There's a lot going on here from a hand-to-hand perspective. Number 6. Agreeing to trade Pokemon. Ash and Dawn are the first trainers in the traveling group to trade Pokemon with one another. I mean, that's just a sign of being able to negotiate and talk about your feelings. Aipom wants to jump to contests, Weasel wants to win gym battles. They're both a bit moody sometimes. Weasel disobeys Dawn, Aipom steals hats, but never Dawn's. And Ash and Dawn manage to come together and agree with one another that they'd be better if they exchange who took care of who. Gotta make sure you have the best interest for your Pokemon, and knowing when to trade them to each other is important, as well as communicating how and why you should. This just shows both Ash, Dawn, and all the shippers out there that they can evolve together, and that Aipom can evolve after it leaves Ash. Number 5. Maybe it'll dawn over Ash one day. It'll dawn over him. Okay, let's just look at the definition of their names. Dawn means becoming evident to the mind, be perceived or understood, which should be about Ash's feelings. It also means the beginning of a phenomenon or period of time, especially when considered favorable, which would be Ash dating here. You know, it's just right in the name. What about Ash? The powdery residue left after the burning of a substance? Well, that's just about their passion. Number 4. Crushes. Did you know Dawn's Baneri had a crush on Ash's Pikachu? I mean, Brock and Professor Oak both have said that Pokemon represent the feeling of their masters, and when two Pokemon fall in love, there's a good chance their trainers will too. Which, I mean, Pikachu didn't really reciprocate those feelings towards Baneri, much like Ash, ever. But that could be a sign here. I mean, at the end when Ash is leaving, Piplup runs to Pikachu, starts hitting him, and cries that they won't be able to see each other. Maybe that's a representation of their feelings too. Maybe Dawn wants to run up to Ash and cry in his arms, but it's Piplup that has to do this display of feelings for Dawn here. Pikachu cries too. Maybe Ash wants to cry in Dawn's arms. Maybe that's what we all need on Valentine's Day here. A good cry in each other's arms. Anyone with me here? Anyone? Alright, well maybe just these two anime characters then. Number 3. Surprise love discs. In the episode Hold the Fion, when Ash and Dawn were in a submarine, they saw a school of love discs while being underwater. Which means Pearlshipping is very canonical, as the Pokedex entry for love disc states it lives in warm seas. It is said that a couple finding this Pokemon will be blessed with eternal love. That's a long time, that's eternity. I mean, they're two people, they're a couple. That's as close to a sign by the writers that you can get. This is also actually a reason for Pearlshipping. You know, this is the first time I ever looked up what reasons were actually made by people advocating for a specific ship, and this is one of them. Sure, a Pokedex entry says that, and they do happen to see it, so it could be a sign. You know, another sign, just like the last few we've mentioned. Maybe the submarine is a sign too. Who just goes down into the depths of the sea with another person without trusting each other? I mean, the time that ship sunk with Misty, Ash, and Brock was a bit different. That wasn't a choice, that was kind of forced onto them. But this is Ash and Dawn agreeing to go diving into the sea. What about diving into a relationship here, Ash? Number 2. I Choose You. Although Dawn may not be in the Pokemon movie I Choose You, she does make an appearance in the ending credits as a bit of a cameo. And sure, so does Serena, Misty, Iris, May with Max, but Dawn is there too, and it's a movie called Pokemon I Choose You. I choose you, Ash. Who you gonna choose? That's a clear 1 in 5 for him to choose at least one of these ending credit gacha cards to pick up one of the girls he traveled with at this time. 1 in 5 is pretty good odds for Dawn. Ash is 0 so far. I mean, maybe that'll go up with more adventures Ash will go on, and more people he will meet, and more movies to be made. And from time after that, there's also Lily, so it jumped up to 1 out of 6, or 1 out of 32 with how many ships there are for Ash. There are a lot. But that's no reason to be demotivated. You can keep on chugging along, Dawn, and make your move because number 1, Dawn is straightforward. Even though Generation 4 is tied with 2 other regions as the second region with the most ghosts, Dawn is very straightforward with Ash and doesn't beat around the bush. Instead of being one of the typical girls Ash meets where they just invite themselves onto his journey, or guilt trip him with a broken bike, or wait for him to ask, Dawn approaches in a straightforward manner, asking if she can come along with Ash, rather than just coming up with some way to hint or hide it from Ash in an incredibly subtle way until he does it. And with her making the first move, that's at least 80% of the journey done right there, and a much more well-turned way to start out a relationship. That's a good start. That's where you want to begin. Hey guys, just a quick reminder during this subscribe on the screen. We'll be doing another lovely special date night Friday next Friday and the Friday after that. So make sure to jump back here and go check that one out when it's up. Hope to see you back here.